Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. We're here with Lionheart, King of Bretonnia, with his retinue. Let's go ahead and take a look. So we've got King Louen up here. Of course, he's got the regeneration with the Ladies Champion. Beloved Son of Bretonnia is not something I always bring, but I had the extra funds, so figured I might as well bring it. Being that it's contextual, Louen has to be lower than 50% base hit points, and it can't target units if they're it affects units map wide, but it can't target them if they are lower than 50% leadership. So it's a little bit situational, and it's kind of hard to make it actually worthwhile, so I generally cut it, but decided to bring it this time. We've also got the Lion Shield, of course, and the Sword of Corone for that melee defense and armor debuff. To support Louen, we've got a Lore of Heavens caster. Of course, since Louen has self-healing, we don't need to heal him. So we've got Harmonic Convergence to be able to buff up Louen, and Wind Blast. So we're facing up against the Dark Elves, and elite tier halberds are definitely going to be an issue in this matchup. So we've got the Wind Blast in order to deal with them. Overcast Wind Blast actually does really nice against armored targets despite its tooltip. And of course, Harmonic Convergence allows Louen to win a pitched engagement in the air up against a dragon, which I don't know if you can see in the distance. If we get rid of the UI, there we go. Maybe you can see that. There is indeed a dragon flying here for the Dark Elves. So very glad I brought that. In terms of an infantry corps, something you guys are very familiar with, we've got 4 peasant mobs backed up by 3 spearmen-at-arms with shields. We've got 1 more spearmen-at-arms with shields detached to protect the Blessed Field Trebuchet, 2 units of Peasant Bowmen with Pox arrows, and 3 units of Grail Knights. So the killing power on the ground is going to be focused in these units of Grail Knights, who are absolutely gorgeous. One of the best looking units in the game, in my opinion. So, for the Druchi forces here, or Druki, I'm not sure, we've got a Dread Lady here. She's just a sword and board variant of the Dreadlord. Up on the dragon, of course, giving her heavy armor piercing damage, decent combat stats overall. We've got 2 Reaper Bolt Throwers, a couple Dark Riders with shields, 1 War Hydra. We've got 2 Blackguard of Nagrond, 4 units of Dread Spears, and 2 Dark Shards. So a couple criticisms with this build, just right off the get-go. It doesn't have any magic, for one thing. I think with this build, I don't really mind the choice of the Dread Lady. If you go Lore of Shadows, I think in this particular matchup you get the magic from Occam's Mindrazor, also augments the armor piercing damage on a unit like the Blackguard of Nagrond, or even on the Dread Lady herself. We'll be able to cut through the physical resistance of Grail tier units, which is worth noting that Lionheart does have that Blessing of the Lady, so of course he does get that 20% physical resistance as well. So, you know, Occam's Mindrazor potentially very good here. Enfeebling Foe is, of course, the direct counter to Harmonic Convergence, so very good here. And yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Reaper Bolt Throwers. Currently as things are, these guys are rarely ever cost effective, even if you're using the anti-infantry or anti-large variant. You know, it's still just really not super cost effective. The Dread Spears, of course, make a lot of sense. You're going to be facing a lot of heavy cavalry, as do the Blackguard of Nagrond, so no complaints there. Dark Shards, I would have liked to have seen shields on these guys. You're going to be out-traded in terms of range by the Peasant Bowmen, so it's definitely worthwhile to bring shields here to give you that missile block chance. Dark Riders with shields are a decent pick here to get around the phalanx and potentially harass archers, although they'll get shut down hardcore by elite tier Bretonnian cav, so you do have to watch out for that. The Hydra, you know, the Fear and Terror can potentially be good against, you know, peasant units, but the issue with the War Hydra is it's relatively vulnerable to missiles. Peasant Bowmen have decent range and missile damage. They could potentially bring fire as well, which is, of course, is going to be good against the Hydra, since it has the standard regeneration trait. And yeah, just not a huge fan of this particular pick in this matchup, but, you know, people don't often see Bretonnia on ladder, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt for trying out some new things. Let's go ahead and kick things into gear. We're going to start with a bit of an artillery engagement first. So we're going to be pulling up the Blessed Field Trebuchet to start firing away at some of my opponent's elite units. Of course, the Blessed Field Trebuchet does have much better range than the Bolt Throwers, having 440 range, whereas the Reaper Bolt Throwers have, let's see, 340, so it does outrange them by 100, what, meters? I guess it would probably be meters, that would make sense. So we're going to be able to pull up into range and start fighting our way at this black guard without these Reaper bolt throwers being able to counter artillery skirmish, which honestly, being a counter artillery battery is one of the best uses for the Reaper bolt throwers and the high elf bolt throwers as well. They're pretty accurate and they do decent missile damage. The issue is they just don't do enough to really, effectively take out cavalry. They don't do enough splash damage as well. Like, they'll hit one cavalry model and the bolt will dissipate and it'll kill that one model probably. But even still, it's not going to go through like a cannonball will and kill multiple models. So it's a little bit rough in that circumstance. But we are going to get some nice hits here on this Black Guard of Nagarond as my forces advance. We're going to be pushing the Grail Knights up and around each flank to try and pressure, being that we can stay out of range of these Dark Shards relatively easily. It's not going to be too much of an issue. Some nasty hits actually on that Black Guard of Nagarond from that Blessed Field Trebuchet. So between the Blessed Field Trebuchet and the Damsel here with the Lore of Heavens, I'm fairly confident that we can take out these elite tier halberds without too much fuss. It's just a matter of wearing them down and making sure we keep the appropriate units secure. So just maneuvering around on the flanks, distracting this artillery while we kind of move the peasant forces up to engage across the main line, doing some nice firing still on that Black Guard here, just staying well out of range of those Dark Shards, just kind of, not really giving my opponent too many good targets to shoot at with his bolt throwers either. We're kind of constantly pulling here and then switching back there and kind of pulling around this way and then maybe back over here. And same thing with Louen, just constantly moving around, really pressuring my opponent into trying to, force some kind of mistakes. So we pulled up, going to get a couple volleys here from the pox arrows and then move up the peasants to engage. Meanwhile, the Black Dragon's looking like it wants an engagement here, but my opponent very wisely pulling back, making sure he's staying near this Dark Shard missile support here. He's got these 2 units on station, but he is going to have to be very careful. A volley going down, doing some pretty decent damage, but that physical resistance definitely helps out Louen in that situation. You can see one of those bolts actually made square contact with Louen and did hardly any damage. So it's really just a flimsy artillery piece and rarely cost effective. I would recommend against ever bringing it, but in the mainline engagement, these peasants are not going to last too long against a big scary Hydra, so they're already turning tail to run. But my opponent not capitalizing on his advantage and, microing his troops after. He definitely needs to give a chase order with this unit of spearmen here. We're going to just bog down this Black Guard with peasants and getting a nice charge with these Grail Knights onto this unit of Dark Shards here. Another unit of Grail Knights just maneuvering around the rear, and we've got that reserve unit of Grail Knight now charging in to inundate the War Hydra. Of course, their high mass is going to mean that, he's not going to be able to pull away. Of course, I say that. Doesn't look like they've actually got the charge order in quite yet. So, over on this side, Black Guard so far have taken a little bit of damage from one wind blast, but it wasn't the best angle, so I didn't get enough damage. This unit of Dark Shards has been outclassed by the Pox arrows, so very good so far. You can see we're already moving ahead on the balance of power. This unit of Black Guard of Nagarond here is just completely bogged down on these peasants, and they're doing a great job of kind of fixing these targets in place. Meanwhile, over here, I completely missed it, but with Harmonic Convergence, Louen was able to decisively beat this Dread Lady here on her dragon. She tried to charge down onto the ground, but then the Grail Knights were there waiting, and so she's done for now. She's going to be trapped by these Grail Knights here, and Louen is going to come down to strike the killing blow against these foul, unchivalrous brutes. So, yeah. Beaky and Louen turning around there and striking the decisive blow. So, with their general gone, despite their murderous prowess, these guys are going to have a pretty rough time. And here comes the Wind Blast, beautifully done right down the line. You can see how much damage that did to those Black Guard, and that's exactly why I bring that spell in this matchup. It can help deal with those elite tier halberds. The Hydra just not able to hold its leadership together with the loss of the general and the fire from the Pox arrows. Of course, the fire arrows would have been better here, but the poison is doing its job, and these Grail Knights just staying right on it, not allowing it to pull its leadership back together. So at this point, we're just putting the finishing touches here. Peasants holding out very admirably, considering they're just low-born filth. With their high melee defense with the shields, doing very, very well here. We are going to be able to finally finish off this last artillery piece here. And Louen and Beaky just routing off those Dark Shards, and now turning their attention over to this last artillery piece. So, You know, some interesting picks from my opponent. I'm not sure if he meant to bring a caster or not. You know, so I've done that before. Even in the best of 5 I did against Gobbo King on Turin's channel. There was one of the matches where I totally forgot to bring a magic caster, although I did end up winning that particular battle. But definitely always in your favor to bring some kind of magic here. So yeah, well played to my opponent. Hope you guys enjoyed watching a little bit of Bretonnia action. Grail Knights, you know, carrying the day here along with Louen. He just decisively beating down that Dreadlord with the help of the Harmonic Convergence. And of course, the buffs that he was carrying as well helped in that. Of course, Stand Your Ground, the Sword of Corone, all that jazz definitely helped out there. Peasants doing their job admirably, holding the line, not getting too many kills, but not dying off completely, which then allowed the Grail Knights to get some work done. Nice work done on the Field Trebuchet as well. 50 kills on Elite Tier Halberds, nothing to sneeze at. Grail Relic did its job of kind of holding that center together in terms of leadership there. And the Damsel Lore of Heavens, 38 kills, most of that coming again against Elite Tier Halberds, so nothing to scoff at there. For my opponent, I do like the pick of the Black Art of Naggarond, of course, and we kind of discussed my opponent's build already, so let's go ahead and just take a look at a couple of things here. I just kind of talk about the Dark Elves in this particular matchup. The Bretonnia is not actually as weak as you might think, especially with that heavy Grail Knight build, so you do need to be aware of that. And so what are some things you can do? I mean, obviously the Black Guard of Naggarond are going to be good if you're able to get on the opposing cavalry. The issue you're going to have is if they're really on top of their micro and cycle charging aggressively, fixing you from one side with peasants. As you pull away from the peasants, it's going to be bad. You'll take damage, and anytime you take damage on an elite tier unit like this, when you're fighting peasants, is bad. Very, very bad. It definitely takes some micro, but if you bring Lore of Shadows here, you have some nice options to be able to help you in that situation. So, of course, the Lore attribute does affect speed, 12% speed map-wide, which is not wildly useful, but it definitely can help if you're chasing, you know, with Cold One Knights or so on. Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma, again, helps bog down cavalry and can leave them stuck in Blackguard a little bit better. Enfeebling Foe, we already discussed, is, you know, basically the hard counter to Harmonic Convergence. If we go over here and actually look at Harmonic Convergence here, it is 26 attack, 27 defense, and as you can see here, Enfeebling Foe is exactly the same. So just the mirror of it. Penumbral Pendulum isn't wildly useful here, although it can be used to clear out large masses of peasants. So, you know, a potential pick here. It's an option, although I don't usually take it. The Withering, same thing. It's a nice toolkit spell, but not really great in this matchup. The spells I really like here are Occam's Mind Razor, of course, for the magical damage and bonus armor piercing. So, for example, if you're taking maybe a couple Cold One Knights, these guys are a decent anti-cav option with armor piercing anti-large. If you, you know, drop an Enfeebling Foe on the opposing Grail Knights and then maybe buff these guys with the Occam's Mind Razor, you know, you could potentially get some good work done. Pit of Shades I'm not a super big fan of in this particular matchup, but something like this, in order to support the Dread Lady on the Dragon, would be very, very helpful, and I definitely recommend Lore of Shadows. Even if you're playing like Chaos or, you know, any faction that can bring Lore of Shadows, I would definitely say it's the go-to pick up against Bretonnia. Of course, unless you're playing the Empire, then definitely bring Nets, because, you know, always bring Nets as the Empire. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'm keeping it coming with more Total War Warhammer 2 content every single day, so stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.